Well, I think everything that we go through, whether it's professionally or personally, shapes who we are as people and who we become. But I think the biggest advice I would say in that regard is be present. I think so often we can get sucked into these bad boys and sit on our couch while we're watching a show with our significant other or with our kids, and we lose the moments that we used to capture, whether it's just with our eyes or with our camera. And there's just so many of them. And I got 3 little girls. So my leadership style is a parenting style. What I mean by that is I'm constantly looking to nurture and encourage the behaviors I want to continue to see. I'm not walking around trying to exploit people and find people doing wrong. I'm there to find them doing good and celebrate it. But there's so many different aspects to it. But I think the most consistent deliverable that I talk about in the book that will impact the listeners that are here is Daily Huddle, because that allows you to communicate, collaborate, create cohesiveness, and celebrate daily. And if you do those 4 C's, everything else you hope to accomplish will become possible.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another exciting episode of our podcast, Reshape Hospitality with Tech. I am Maria, your host, and here is my co host, Kazim. Joining us today is James Ferguson, who is known for his leadership and is an author and culture speaker. He will be sharing with us the industry insights, stories, and strategies that are about to reshape the industry. Welcome, James, and thanks for your time to be with us on a podcast. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys. I appreciate your time and the offer to connect today and talk more about culture.
James, your journey in the industry has been nothing short of remarkable. Could you please introduce yourself, share your background, and when did you first realize your passion for the hospitality industry?
Amazing question. So I'll give you the shortest version I can. So started in the industry when I was going to college, working 3 to 11 at the front desk. It just worked out that was the kind of the only role you could get that would give you 8 hours of work while still going to school. So, I've always been a people person. So initially the concept of going into hotels from retail, which is where I really started to work in my career, was because of my dad. So my dad was a project manager, and at the time he was working at a hotel in Wisconsin. And he shared with me, he's like, hey, you're a people person. I'm living in this hotel working on this project. I think you should go look into that instead of retail. So again, went to school, found this opportunity, started at the desk, and then worked my way up. And I think, we underestimate the power of the way we look and the way we feel and how that impacts how we move in the world. And it was the first time that I had to put on a suit for work, and that
Mhm.
really changed my perspective of who I was and who I could be. And then again, the industry was super rewarding in the sense that whatever you do impacts where you go. And so I was able to grow quickly within that role, moved on to hotels that are full service, limited service, and worked my way up through the front desk to ops, then to AGM, and then GM. And then now I'm the director of culture at Wurzak Hotel Group, which allows me to really focus on creating and sustaining our culture and leadership efforts across the company. So it's been a very rewarding process and journey like everyone else's. But again, the beauty about our industry and the passion that I have for it is because I've been really able to control my destiny. And there's something very powerful about that this industry provides.
That's quite a remarkable journey, James. What specific challenges did you face at the beginning of your career?
I think with anybody that comes into a leadership role,
Mhm.
as you grow in your career and as an individual, you come in with a different approach than you do later in your career. Meaning, when I first got a leadership role as an AFOM at that front desk that I first started at, I came in with almost like a I know it all attitude, and I
Mhm.
started to withhold information because I felt it made me more valuable. But in reality, as many of us learn over our career, the more that we give is the more that we get. And so withholding information or talking people in a way that's not productive because you have a title, it just doesn't work. And so luckily, I learned that early in my career to allow me to pivot and understand that it's really about the people in each position that drive everything every day. And I'm here to serve them so that
Mhm.
they can then serve the guests.
How have these challenges and experiences shaped your approach to your current role?
Well, I think everything that we go through, whether it's professionally or personally, shapes who we are as people and who we become. I feel very fortunate to be very self-aware at this point in my life, and so I'm constantly learning from people,
Mhm.
and I always share that with others. So it's always about learning from people, whether it's good or bad, right? And I've
Correct.
become who I've become because of the people in my life, whether it was things that they made mistakes on that I learned from through them, or things that people do really well and I say, oh, I want to take that and emphasize it in my own way. So I think everything I've gone through has been a learning moment, and the more that we're self-aware and self-conscious of that idea that every day there's something to learn. There's this saying that says you don't uh, fail, you learn. That's
Mm-hmm.
kind of the way I approach it. Like I've never failed anything. I've just learned through the process, and each one of those learns allows me to be a better leader. So that's my approach. And again, I share you guys with your listeners. Like everybody teaches you something, and the more that you take notes on that, the better you can use it to improve it.
You have written a book called The Confetti Culture. Could you please explain what inspired you to write this book?
Absolutely. I actually just posted on LinkedIn a few minutes ago this very answer. So today's actually National Authors Day, which is why I shared the post. But to give you the backstory, in
Mhm.
2016, I was laid off from a job. And so during that time away from work, I decided to use my time as wisely as possible. So I created a playbook for myself personally so that when I took on the next role, I was able to be most prepared for that role. And so I created that playbook, everything on how to do things, what to do, where to do it, why to do it, so that I wasn't walking in and re-greasing the wheels. I was ready to walk in and crush it from day one. And so I did that, took on a new role, and saw the impact of that work that I did, and saw how it set me for success in that role and beyond. And then 2020 hit, and many of us, if not all of us, were put in that same position again. And so I said, don't sit on your butt. Don't think about all the things that are going wrong. Use this time that you'll never have again to set yourself up, but also others up for success. So I started to say, okay, I used this before. I've learned a lot since then. What can I do to create this playbook for everybody else? And so in the book, it's really focused on the power of recognition and reward in a company culture, and how confetti is a tool that, takes a room that's doom and gloom and makes it kaboom, and it elevates the experience in the same way that, you see confetti at a championship game one or New Year's Eve. It enhances the experience. And so the Confetti Culture Playbook really creates that guideline for anybody that's looking to improve their culture and gives them a step-by-step process that's very digestible. It's a short book. All the information is in small paragraphs that allow you to take each bite and move forward. But it also inspires new ideas, and it allows people to kind of hear an idea and take it and make it their own. So I feel very fortunate to see the outpouring of interest and impact that it's had. I never imagined that when I started the process, but I feel very fortunate to have that now be really my business card for everything that I've been able to do, including the role that I'm in now. I mean, if I hadn't wrote that book, probably wouldn't be the director of culture right now for the company I'm with. So really fortunate to be part of that process, watch that organically grow, and ultimately sit here today to talk to you about it.
The idea behind your book is really impressive. Also, one more thing, James. In what way the principle from the confetti culture influence your approach to building a positive work environment within the different organizations you have been a part of it?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, I want you guys to read the book, so I don't want to give away too many secrets. But at the end of the day, culture is about consistency,
Mhm.
and creating consistency in everything that you do, from what you say, how you do it, decisions you make, who you bring on, who you don't. And so, basically, the principles go through all the things that I have found success in. And one of the great things about it is that, it was obviously designed around the hotel industry. That's where my career has been, and that's my point of reference, right? But ultimately, the principles that I apply in this book and talk about often is something that applies to so many other industries. And again, that's something that's been so rewarding to kind of witness, is that I wrote it for one group of people, but it ultimately goes well beyond that. And so it's been really cool to see that impact across other industries. But again, I think everything stems from the first day forward and what you do every day. I mean, daily huddle is something that's crucial because that ultimately sets the tone from a leader and for your team. But there's so many different aspects to it. But I think the most consistent deliverable that I talk about in the book that will impact listeners that are here is daily huddle, because that allows you to communicate, collaborate, create cohesiveness, and celebrate daily. And if you do those 4 C's, everything else you hope to accomplish will become possible.
Being the director of culture at Wurzak Hotel Group, could you give us an overview of the Wurzak Hotel Group and currently how many properties they are operating?
Sure. So Wurzak Hotel Group has 10 hotels and one in development right now. There's 1,959 rooms in our portfolio, where the one in development is going to be a Moxie Hotel in St. Petersburg, Florida. So that's coming Q1 of next year. But it's a small hotel group company that's family owned and operated, and is really in a growth phase right now, where we're adding layers of leadership and layers of focus. And that's really where my role has come in, is that, as we continue to grow and scale our efforts, we're looking to make sure that we don't lose grasp of what's important and making sure that people are in areas to focus on those. And of course, culture is one of them. So for my role, it's internal marketing and communications, it's PR, it's employee engagement, it's employee appreciation. So I really have a hand in the whole scope of the employee journey. And I think as I'm continuing to grow in this role, my impact on that is going to continue to expand. But again, because it's not something that was necessarily here before, it's allowed me to really grow and learn through the process of the role, as well as have my fingerprints kind of all over everything and really make a large impact. Where in another company with the same role that's existed for a long time, I may not have that same exposure, that same learning and rewarding aspect to it. So I feel very fortunate to be a company that chose me for it. Give you another little backstory. I used to be the GM of one of our hotels. It was an Element in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. And ultimately, I took on this role as director of culture at the beginning of this year, because they saw my efforts as the GM and saw that this was my passion and knew about my book and believed in me in a way that others had not yet. So I think this says a lot about the company, about the leadership, and about where we're going as a company. And again, I'm excited to just be scratching the surface.
If we talk about Wurzuk Hotel services for the guest, what strategies you guys are implementing to make guest services even better?
That's a great question. So when it comes to me, what I can speak on directly is one of the great things that we're focusing on right now is activating our brand pillars. So, just like you have your mission and your values and all that, we're building incentives and things like that around those values and those pillars so that we can activate our team. Because quotes are only words unless you live by them. And so we're trying to do that. And so we just actually rolled out our brand pillars on posters across our properties. So if you go onto our LinkedIn for Wurzak Hotel Group, you actually see a snippet about that today. But kind of the next phase to that is building out programs or educational elements to ensure that they're activated. So without going through all of them, there's things like we make great things happen. We find opportunities. We have fun. We bring the building to life. And so we're creating activations within our huddles, as well as through initiatives that allow people to be recognized for living out that behavior and taking action because of it, as well as educating how the operation and how we look at things, how we can better live those out proactively versus reactively.
Considering to your experiences in this industry, I would like to know your input on this question. What do you envision for the future of the hospitality industry in the next 5 or 10 years?
Well, that's a good question. If there's one thing that I continue to learn is that, and I'm going to speak specifically to culture. I think the idea that culture changes, that people's needs change, I think ultimately the fundamental need as a human will always exist in the same way it has 50 years ago and 50 years from now. And I think there's plenty of people coming out with new books and new sayings and new ways of doing things, but ultimately they speak to the same thing. And if we focus on putting our employees first, they will then put the guests first. And it can be that simple and that hard. And I think through COVID, we either lost sight of that or we regained focus on that. But at the end of the day, we need to make sure we stay aligned to that, because right now our business is starting to come back. But we still have those lean teams, and we're expecting more than we used to with less people to do it. So we really have to emphasize that fact that we have to put our employees' needs first. And if you want your team to be there for you when you need them most, you got to be there for them when they need you most. And finding ways to consistently deliver on that will ultimately allow you to sustain your efforts now and into the future as companies grow and improve the way they do things.
I appreciate your insight on this. James, your social post highlights that your team members are really dedicated and consistent when it comes to work. Can you tell us the name of those individuals who have been your source of inspiration in reaching your goals?
Well, I will say this, there's, as a former GM, you have a very close connection with your teams. And obviously in this role, I'm more zoomed out. So I don't have the direct impact or direct ability to speak to necessarily individuals in the same way. But I would say that what's been so rewarding to see is the impact of some of the initiatives we've created. So one of the things that we have is called Culture Champions. And what that is, it's a peer-to-peer recognition program. So a lot of times when you have employee of the month, employee of the quarter, or whatever it might be, it's a lot of times the leadership picking who the best performer is. Well, what we've been able to do is create a program that's peer-to-peer, which allows the people that are in the kitchen to celebrate the people in the kitchen, or engineering to celebrate housekeeping, or whatever it may be. But it allows people that are, as an example, in the heart of the house to be recognized just as much, if not more, than the people in the front of the house. And in normal programs, you typically see a lot of front desk people or people that are, again, front of house that get celebrated because they're seen the most and they're actively involved and impacting the guest experience. But in this program, it has allowed people to be seen, heard, and supported in a way that I have not seen in other companies. And so I think what's great about that, I want to share that with your listeners, is that if you shift it from that to peer-to-peer, it really opens the doors to allow people that aren't seen, heard, or supported to be that. And as an example, we just celebrated our quarterly luncheons as a company last week. And that's kind of some of the social you've seen recently. And most of the people that have won were executive chefs, executive housekeepers, engineers, line cooks, like all back of house people. And I think that speaks directly to the program and the ability to recognize one another, and the power that when people have a voice and can put that on display, it allows the people that aren't normally seen to be seen. And I think that's been the most rewarding and impactful thing from our culture and our company, is we're allowing people that aren't normally seen to be seen. We're celebrating their effort, and we're doing it in a way that hits every level of the organization. And then from that, we shout it from the rooftops. We put it on social. We put it in our newsletter. We put it via text. We put it in emails and all these things. And so then it just inspires the people that aren't on the list, that aren't nominated yet, to be the next one. And I think that program's been really a game changer, and we've really seen the momentum gain as we've moved forward through this year. And this past luncheon was really great to be a part of.
You are a rising leader in the hospitality industry that working at the property on the corporate level. And if I will ask about this, what advice would you give to young hospitality professionals aiming to start their career in leadership roles, specifically in terms of developing strong leadership skills and culture of engagements? So, what you suggest there?
Great question. My biggest suggestion or tip would be to start reading books. And the reason is many of us find our mentors in the words of books. And there's a quote that says, "What you read when you don't have to determines who you become when you can't help it." And so earlier in my career, I started to read leadership books, everything from John Gordon to John Maxwell to, I mean, there's an amount, so many books out there, right?
Mhm.
And through that process, I was able to take what they've taught me and go apply it. And so the more that you read, again, when you don't have to, it'll determine how you speak, how you act, who you are as a man, woman, or leader without you even thinking about it, because it just becomes ingrained in you. And I think the reason I am who I am today is because I've read hundreds of books on it and have been
Mhm.
able to have trial and error and make mistakes and attempt things and make new ideas. And now I'm able to kind of apply that. So if you're early in your career, the textbooks they give you at school, they're not adding that much value. I mean, let's just be honest. It's what you do after school that ultimately
Mhm.
impacts how quickly your career grows and how far you go.
I'm sure your advice will help them. Which hospitality conference do you find the most interesting? Can you name it?
Well, I'm going to have to go with the one that's coming up. It's the Wisconsin Hotel and Lodging Conference. It's coming up this week.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, feel very fortunate to be a keynote speaker there. Extremely strong lineup there. We also have a colleague of mine, Charles Ryan Min, who wrote the book Thanks for Coming In Today.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be keynote speaking as well. The fact that they were able to get both of us in the same, I'm just so excited to add so much educational value to that group. It's going to be a very large group up in Wisconsin there. And again, that's from the 5th to the 7th. But look, I think there's a number of conferences that apply great value, and there's also conferences for everybody. If you want to talk about top line revenue, there's a conference for that. If you want to talk about culture, there's a conference for that, and there's also conferences within markets that apply directly to every company. So if you're listening and you're saying, I don't usually do that, should I get involved? I would go, because you know what, even if you take one note away from any conference, you've gotten added value. And I know I'm excited again for this coming next week, because I have everything within my book and everything I've learned through my career ready to spill out and give out to others. And again, that goes back to what I started our conversation with. The more you
Thanks
give
for
away, the more you get in return, you know?
with your hectic work schedule. I'm wondering how you manage to have quality time with family and friends.
Oh, that's the most important piece. Most important piece. I have a tattoo right here that says family first. Yeah, you have to invest time in that. Look, honestly, I feel fortunate in my role now versus being a GM. As an operator, you're kind of on 24 hours a day. That's what you have to do. In this role, I'm able to balance that a little bit more and have consistent and schedulable time with them, which is great. But I think the biggest advice I would say in that regard is be present. I think so often we can get sucked into these bad boys and sit on our couch while we're watching a show with our significant other or with our kids, and we lose the moments that we used to capture, whether it's just with our eyes or with our camera. And there's just so many of them. And I got three little girls that are growing up super fast, and you blink and they're adults and they don't want to talk to you anymore. So, I think I would just share to be present. When you are off, be off. Of course, be available to your team. But in order to be available, you have to set them up for success and practically train them to be prepared. And then if you do that, you can enjoy your time. And I feel fortunate to be able to do that now.
So, James, first thing first, as you are an expert on the culture side of the industry, different leaders have different management styles. For example, in our industry, Bill Marriott Jr. had his own management style called management by walking around. So, in your opinion, what should be the ideal management style that fits our industry in this age?
Great question. So my leadership style is a parenting style. What I mean by that is I'm constantly looking to nurture and encourage the behaviors I want to continue to see. I'm not walking around trying to exploit people and find people doing wrong. I'm there to find them doing good and celebrate it. And in the same way that we encourage our kids as they're learning to walk and talk and use a fork, is the same principle in the way I apply my leadership with our team. If you want to encourage behaviors to go in a certain direction, you need to be there to encourage them through the process. And so, just like I said a minute ago about being present, and just like Bill Marriott said, you need to be out on the floors. Days of being in your office are no more. You need to engage with your team. And if you engage with your team will be engaged.
And also, technology is a very big part of the hospitality industry nowadays. So, how important do you think is to educate the staff and train the staff in the modern technology especially those that are being implementing in the hospitality industry right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think technology is consistently growing and impacting the way we do things. I think we're able to connect with guests in a way that we have never done before. I think there's so many resources available that people don't even tap into. I would say that even as in the culture aspect, from a communication standpoint, I mean, we utilize a text service to engage with our teams that just wasn't even thought about in the past. But now we're able to communicate company updates, birthdays, celebrate anniversaries, so many different things in a way that we just didn't before. And we're able to either automate that, which is huge because that's a task that can take its own time, or it can be, again, very direct to something that's timely that's happening right now. So I think change is inevitable. Technology is part of that process. And as we continue on as professionals, whether it's in our industry or beyond, embrace the change, don't fight it, learn what's new and apply it. And if we do that and continue to train and educate people to do that, the more we'll be able to focus on what's most important, which is our guests.
So, what do you think hotel operators need to do to provide the best guest experience to their guests, utilizing both their manpower and the technology? What is the best combination?
It's the same way I talk about leadership. It's all about actively listening and then taking immediate action. And so what I mean by that is this: whether it's with your team and they're telling you something, you need to act. Like, it's one thing to hear someone, it's another thing to actually listen to them. And again, being present with them and with the guests is crucial. So nowadays you have these platforms that allow you to text with guests. Use that to your advantage. Don't wait for them to tell you something's wrong with the room. Reach out to them before arrival, connect with them, build profiles, do all these things that allow you to be prepared for their arrival and surprise and delight them in a way that they haven't experienced. I think that's such an under-tapped resource is technology, because people have their information out there and available to you, their preferences, all this stuff. But, you know, it's something that we still just don't like tap into enough. And if we really start to focus on what's available to us or start building something that creates more availability to us, again, we can start to customize experiences so that at our Hilton properties or our Elements or our Sheratons, they get a better experience because we're more on top of what you're sharing with us. And again, those conversations that we have can really set us up for success, because sure, there's a brand standard for every Sheraton and every Element and every Hilton and Home2 and all these things. But ultimately, it's the people within those buildings that impact the outcomes that the guests experience. And so if we start to leverage the technology to learn more about our guests and then actively do something about it, we can set ourselves apart, not only in the market, but also within the brand at scale. And I think everybody listening should really utilize the resources that are available to do that.
Because hospitality has always been about that human touch, but nowadays we see a lot of talk about that human touch is going to be obsolete, technology will take over. So, what's your opinion on that?
I think that, again, going back to actively listening, some people don't want that much engagement. So I think it's about understanding who's in front of you and focusing solely on that. Don't have a standard for everyone that walks in your door. Approach each person and be present with them and listen to their needs and then deliver on it. Some people want a robot to come deliver their towels. Some people only want to be spoken to via text. But at the end of the day, as I said a few minutes ago, on a fundamental level, we are all conditioned to be needed and to be part of something and feel comfortable. And the only way that we can do that truly is with one another. So again, some people have changed their approach or their needs, but at the end of the day, that human touch can still be the factor that exceeds expectations in a way technology never can.
And also, staff shortage has been a prevalent problem in our industry. So, how much do you think it is difficult for hotel operators, especially in regards to trained staff? How difficult it is managing them, and how can they overcome this problem?
Well, I think, as a former operator and operating, through COVID and out coming out of COVID, which was probably the most lean and mean we've ever been. Um, at the end of the day, doing walkabouts daily, connecting with your team, having conversations, building relationships, that's going to be the determining factor. You might not have as many housekeepers as you used to, but if you're getting up there and cleaning a board because someone called out, that will make them more motivated. If you're at the front desk and you just got a call that someone's not coming in and you cover that shift and don't make the FOM come in to do it because it's their day off, that's going to be the thing. So I think what we do speaks volumes. And there's a quote that I often share that is, what we do speaks so loudly that I can't hear what you say. So you could tell people how great you are, how much you're there for them, how much you do this or that. But at the end of the day, what you do speaks louder than anything else. And so with your lean teams, if you're shooting and pointing, if you're sitting at your desk and telling people how and where to do things, but you're not really part of the process and not on the floors with them and engaging and supporting their efforts, then you're not going to get them to be part of having collective responsibility. But if you're up there fixing a door because the batteries are dead, or you're up there, and I don't mean inserting yourself where you don't need to, but when you need to fill the gaps and when there's needs and your team needs you, be there. And when you do that, again, they will be there for you when you need them.
That was great, James. This comes to the end of our conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was an amazing experience talking to you, and both of us and all of our audience learned a lot from you. And once again, it was an amazing experience having you on our podcast.
Yeah, right, James. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. I appreciate you.
Thanks for watching us. Hope you liked today's episode. See you with another guest. Till then, take care and goodbye.